Hi guys, I'm lit a little differently today. So, normally I would be, I don't know. What's up, guys? So come in. We got 5 questions. I've asked the Mile High Report staff for the response to 5 questions. We will ask you guys your response to those questions as well. Those questions are: number 1, which quarterback in the 2019 draft can beat Joe Flacco in a camp battle? Number 2, wait, I just lost him. I'll give you guys a second to get in here though. But number 2, who would you draft in the 6th round this season? Interesting question from Instagram. Number 3, what should the Broncos offer for Russell Wilson? Another interesting thing that we're going to cover is all of the free agency quarterbacks who will be available in the 2020 offseason. So the NFL draft and the free agency, who's going to be available. My count is that there are 21 starting quarterbacks available and 22 jobs which are currently filled. So there's a surplus of quarterbacks. We'll get into that in a little bit. Number 4, the 4th question: should the Broncos target a center, left tackle, or right guard with day 2 picks? So this question is assuming, I guess Connor McGovern's either going to switch to right guard or stay at center, and then who would be the remaining spot that you would want to fulfill. And then number 5, if you were starting today as the owner of the Broncos, what is the first thing that you would do? So these are questions I'm going to ask for you. These are questions that I'm going to get here. The kind of thesis of this of today's podcast is the amount of quarterbacks who will be available in the 2020 NFL draft and in 2020 NFL free agency. If you guys are fans of the podcast or even Mile High Report, you may have seen I had a tweet about a week ago talking about the currently scheduled quarterbacks to hit free agency in 2020. Here's a partial list. This is just me pulling people's names who will be available. Bronco Betty, good afternoon. People who will be available quarterbacks who will be available in the 2020 or in 2020 via free agency. I just pulled Miss South Carolina in 2000, whatever that was, such as the Rock. Tom Brady will be available. Russell Wilson will be available. It's currently scheduled to be available. Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Dak Prescott, Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, Case Keenum, Jacoby Brissett, Blake Bortles, Nate Sudfeld, Teddy Bridgewater, and Brian Hoyer. All those guys are scheduled to be unrestricted free agents in 2020. Yes, some of them are going to get re-signed. Russell Wilson's deadline is today, April 15th, for contract negotiations. It's an imposed deadline that he created. Then you have guys like Phillip Rivers, who may return to the Los Angeles Chargers. Tom Brady most likely returning to the New England Patriots. But as it stands, you have a significant amount of starting quarterbacks you can already call for the 2020 season. We've got Carson Wentz and Jared Goff are both going to be in their 5th-year extensions. You can guess that they're going to get re-signed for their 5th year. You got Aaron Rodgers, he's not going anywhere. Matt Ryan's not going anywhere. Patrick Mahomes, Jimmy Garoppolo, Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, Cam Newton, Matthew Stafford, Nick Foles, Mitchell Trubisky, and Andrew Luck. So those are quarterbacks who are already kind of absolutely 100% will be with their teams, are starting with their teams in 2020. Then you have 5 teams who drafted the starting quarterbacks in 2018. The Cleveland Browns with Baker Mayfield. You got New York Jets with Sam Darnold, Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen, Arizona Cardinals with Josh Rosen, and then with the Baltimore Ravens you have Lamar Jackson. So you add 5 more onto the names that I already listed. That's 22 teams who have starting quarterbacks in 2020 already. It's only 2019, but already for 2020 we can say that there are 22 teams which have their starting quarterback already. And then you add on the teams this season who will draft Kyler Murray, Drew Lock, Dwayne Haskins, and Daniel Jones. Add 4 more teams onto the 22 teams who already have their starting quarterback. Now have 26 teams for 2020 who have their starting quarterback already. That does not include the quarterbacks I named earlier. Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Dak Prescott, Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett, Blake Bortles, Nate Sudfeld, Teddy Bridgewater, and Brian Hoyer. And then if you add in I'm gonna pull 6 names from the 2020 NFL draft, who will likely be starters or who will be drafted in 2020 in order to be starters. So there's 6 more people on top of the 26 who are already who've already been named by me. There's Justin Herbert of Oregon. There's Tua in Alabama, KJ Costello in Stanford, Jake Fromm in Georgia, Jacob Eason in let's go with Eason in Washington, and then Shea Patterson out of Michigan. 6 new quarterbacks, most likely to be drafted in the first or the second round of the 2020 draft. It's really difficult to justify a starting quarterback in the 2019 draft as of this exact moment. You can kind of see possibly why some of the quarterbacks have, Dwayne Haskins is supposedly falling down people's draft boards right now, but in reality what it is people are like, well, what's available next season? Okay, are these quarterbacks comparable to the guys that are coming out next season? No. Okay, we may have seen that shift happen, and also why why there'd be such a demand for Joe Flacco, let's say, for example. Zappa says, my preference would definitely be to roll with Joe Flacco in 2019 and bet the farm on quarterback they like in 2020. Yeah, it's starting to become like kind of apparent, right? I don't think you're getting a quarterback in first round. If you're a Broncos fan, if you are a Raiders fan, they need a quarterback. I didn't mention Derek Carr. Arizona Cardinals, I didn't mention Josh Rosen I did mention him as one of the 2018 starters. I don't think Josh Rosen is going anywhere. If Josh Rosen is going somewhere, I suppose it's to start, so my number doesn't change. There's still 26 quarterbacks in the NFL right now who are scheduled to start in 2020, and 21 quarterbacks becoming available. So there's this huge surplus with 45 available starting quarterbacks and only 32 teams who need them. It's a buyer's market, and the Broncos are in need of buying, and I cannot imagine that the powers that be in the NFL haven't already considered all these things that I've just mentioned to you in significance and said 2020 is where we're getting our quarterback. So that is I guess my spiel on first round quarterbacks. That's why I don't think there's one happening for Denver. That's the best case scenario I can make it. I want you guys that are here, please contribute right here over on the side in the chat. I'm going to ask the questions one more time. I'm going to read through our responses at Mile High Report, the writers' responses at Mile High Report. I'm going to give you my opinion, and then I'm also hoping to get your opinion as well. So we'll go with the first question. And also, sorry. I've asked you all on Twitter as well. So those of you who answer the questions on Twitter, that's awesome. Please continue to do so. I will pull your responses as well. Right now, first question: which quarterback in the 2019 draft can beat Joe Flacco in a camp battle? I put that up for a vote on Twitter. I've had a decent amount of responses. I only gave 4 options. I only included Kyler Murray, Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, and Dwayne Haskins. I didn't include my guy Tyree Jackson, just because I don't want to make anybody. I'm not trying to troll anyone. I'm just trying to get an honest answer. So first question: which quarterback in the 2019 draft can beat Joe Flacco in camp? Our Mile High Report writers pool came back with especially no one. Tim Lynch, none. Flacco will be Broncos starter regardless of who they add before training camp. Ian St. Clair says depends on the type of camp and where the camp is. If fire building is involved, I'll go with Flacco. Scotty Payne says no one. Joe Rose says no one in camp. Jeff says depending on what the front office is looking for, Kyler Murray could potentially provide game-breaking electricity that Flacco doesn't, but asking any rookie to come in and beat out a 10-year vet is crazy. Taylor says I'm with the others. No 2019 rookie quarterback will be able to beat out Flacco. I reminded everyone that Flacco lost an in-season battle with Lamar Jackson last season, and I don't know that. And Lamar Jackson was also the 5th drafted quarterback in 2018. Most people at that point disagreed with me, and Tim invoked the Case Keenum. So right now, Twitter says 40% of Twitter audience says that Kyler Murray could beat Joe Flacco in a camp battle. 35% think Drew Lock can beat Joe Flacco in a camp battle. 22% of our Twitter audience thinks that Dwayne Haskins can defeat Joe Flacco in a camp battle this season, and 3% believe that Daniel Jones could defeat Joe Flacco in a camp battle. So it looks like almost half of our audience think that Kyler Murray would defeat Joe Flacco in a camp battle. Kyler Murray right now, it's debatable which team he'll end up with, but it seems still most likely that he would end up with being the number one overall pick. The number one overall pick, you would expect them to in some type of battle, you'd expect them to win over Joe Flacco, who the Broncos gave up a third, fourth, fifth round pick. I don't know. Bronco Betty says she voted for Dwayne Haskins, as you should. The most likely quarterback to end up with the Broncos, if you're absolutely like which quarterback we're gonna get, my money would be on Dwayne Haskins right now. I don't think Drew Lock is it. I think Drew Lock is number 2, unless Dwayne Haskins is drafted earlier than we expect. I think he should be available at 10, and if the Broncos are going to draft a quarterback, I think it would be Dwayne Haskins. The question now is Dwayne Haskins above Kyler Murray on an actual team's draft boards, or is that just some draft nick whatever? Draft nick magic. Broncos said it just seems he's currently a better fit. Yeah, I agree with you. Pro style quarterback at Ohio State. The thing is, there hasn't been, if you go by provenance, if you're going off of that school, like who has Ohio State brought to the NFL as far as quarterbacks go? You can make the same argument against Missouri though. Missouri's, Blaine Gabbert. I think he went to Missouri. There haven't been a lot of Missouri and Ohio State. Neither of them are known for their significant quarterback contributions to the NFL. Oklahoma's almost in the same boat. They got Sam Bradford, and you got Baker Mayfield. Sam Bradford hasn't made a significant contribution to the NFL, and he's in his, I don't want to guess 10th season, but he's somewhere around there. Number 2, who would you draft in the 6th round this season? Let's see I can't imagine this got a good response from anybody at Mile High Report, but let's see. Or let's see at Twitter. Twitter might have had something interesting to say. Twitter says, okay, let's pull from Mile High Report real quick. Mile High Report says, Joe Rowe, thank you, says best player available on his board. Taylor says that the team doesn't address tight end early. The early 6 would be a great place to pick up Josh Oliver. Josh Oliver, the tight end from San Jose State, is who Taylor would recommend there at 6 in the 6th. I would be the same. There's a couple 6th round picks that I would love to make. There's guys who I think would be significant contributors to the Denver Broncos who would be available in the 6th round. Tony Pollard, the Memphis running back. No one knows about this guy. He is one of the most, if not the greatest, kick returners in NCAA football. He was in 2017, and then 2018. I'm guessing the coach cut a deal with him where he didn't have to play kick returner anymore. But in the NFL, this guy's gonna be a problem. He's not even rated above 30 in running back prospects. No one has publicly given information to show that this guy, that they acknowledge that this guy is the best returner available in college football. That's someone I would draft in the 6th round. Memphis running back Tony Pollard. That's a significant get at that point. You get your kick returner for the next 10 seasons, and he ends up being your 3rd string or your 4th string running back. Great. That's who I would draft in the 6th round. I also have a few tight ends that I'm interested in. Who probably be available not only in the 6th round but also as college free agents. Caleb Wilson I've not made any Caleb Wilson, UCLA tight end. I have not made any question as to how I feel about him. I think he's on his way to being the next Hall of Fame tight end. Yeah. Bronco Betty. If you want to know. No, so number 3, what should the Broncos offer for Russell Wilson? Number 3, what should the Broncos offer for Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson, it's April 15th. This is his internal deadline with the Seattle Seahawks. Make a significant offer by this date, or let's not talk about it at all until the season's over. Not quite a significant threat, because even under this threat, Russell Wilson is still playing for the Seattle Seahawks in 2019. Exactly 1 month ago, Russell Wilson was on The Tonight Show, and Jimmy Fallon specifically asked about Russell Wilson signing with the New York Giants. Russell Wilson made a joke about it, but as some of you may or may not know, nothing is asked on The Tonight Show without someone's PR person also saying it's okay. So Russell Wilson or his people made sure that question got asked, and it was given a significant response by the home crowd, as Russell Wilson himself did spring training this season with the New York Yankees. So he was already kind of a New Yorker. Number 3 question: what should the Broncos offer for Russell Wilson? Tim Lynch says 2 firsts and Flacco. Scotty says not happening. Joe Rose says start with 2 firsts, and if Seattle is receptive, go from there. Jeff says I'm with Tim, start with 2 ones and Flacco. Don't give up Chris Harris Jr. if you don't have to. His trade value isn't that large anyway. It likely equals a 3rd round at best on the open market. Would rather throw in a 3rd rounder if they want instead of Harris. Taylor says I'm with Jeff, 2 firsts and a 3rd, and Flacco would be a place to end up. Russell Wilson's yours for 3 firsts. I would say 2 firsts and a 3rd is more than fair. If you really want Russell Wilson, you get 2 firsts and a 2nd, and it could be a 2021 second or a 2020 second, whatever it is. That guarantees you Russell Wilson. I mean, it ain't happening, but hypothetically over 2 firsts and a Flacco. I mean, the quarterback trades, we like to say that they're not happening, but what's happening right now in the NFL, you saw it happen with the Broncos a little bit. Colin Kaepernick would have been a Denver Broncos quarterback had John Elway been willing to pay market value. Case Keenum ended up with the Broncos last season because John Elway only wants to pay a certain amount of money to a quarterback. He wasn't able to secure Kirk Cousins for that same reason. He's not going to go over $20 million a year, let's say. And then Joe Flacco fits right into that money. He's not gonna. If John Elway doesn't want to pay more than $20 million a year to his quarterback, that's fine. But most teams are kind of like, I also don't want to pay more than $20 million a year for my quarterback. So that's where Russell Wilson is. The Seattle Seahawks are kind of like, hey, we can't formulate a competitive team if we're paying you too much. And Russell Wilson's like, the NFLPA won't let me take less than a record-breaking contract. Sorry guys, I won a Super Bowl. He's in the same boat that Joe Flacco was a few years ago when Joe Flacco got the current contract that just got traded to the Baltimore Ravens. So I don't want to say it's not possible. I want to say that this is the start of an interesting revolution, and with all of those, come full circle to the beginning of our conversation where I was talking about how many quarterbacks are going to be available in free agency. Add Russell Wilson in there. P.S. There's a surplus of quarterbacks. I think this, if anything, before the lockout, there's a lockout scheduled, I think in 2021, might be 2020, I'm not positive. I think let's go with 2021 or 2022. That lockout, prior to that, it's going to get bad for quarterbacks. The quarterback market's going to significantly drop, and then the lockout's going to happen. And then who knows, that teams may owe quarterbacks 60% of their revenue at the end of the lockout. No one knows that that's going to happen. So right now, there's just a push, as you saw with Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, there's just a push to see who can get the most money, and Russell Wilson's leading that now. He's the next quarterback up. He's the next guy. And Russell Wilson may not decide Tom Brady's salary next season. Drew Brees may retire, but Ben Roethlisberger is going to need to be re-signed. Dak Prescott needs to be re-signed. Russell Wilson needs to be re-signed. This is a significant amount of starting quarterbacks who need to be re-signed next season. And right now, Russell Wilson's just the top guy. John says, Ian, long time, not sure if asked, but we are waiting until next year and Herbert to draft a quarterback. Elway loves him. Elway already scouted him. I think the effort was made in order, in just in case Justin Herbert, the for those of you who aren't aware, he is a Bear. He is a Justin is a quarterback for Oregon. The thought was that he was probably joining the draft this season. He didn't. He's going to go back to Oregon for one season. He possibly, by that decision alone, may have made him the number 1 overall pick next season. But there's a slew of available quarterbacks currently. Tua from Alabama, he might be another. And then Jake Fromm from Georgia. All 3 of those guys are kind of like top 5 guys right now in how the season dictates. Their 2019 season may dictate where they're actually drafted. I think John very astutely pointed out. I think the Broncos are at this point 2020 looks like a way better shot in 2020 than it does this season. And hopefully they're building the team around that possible quarterback. So you'll see a significant first round draft pick this season, but it's going to be to improve a different area of the team. There's a significant need for a starting tight end. There's a significant need for a starting inside linebacker. We need a cornerback too. We need someone to play opposite Chris Harris. I think Kareem Jackson's playing strong safety. If Kareem Jackson's going to play corner this week or this season, the Broncos need a strong safety. So that's 5 first round picks, the positions at first round, or 5 picks in the first round that I think you should debate. Where would he be ranked if he did come out this year in the draft? He would be number 1. He would be over Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray would be number 2. I think it's debatable right now whether Kyler Murray or Dwayne Haskins is number 1 or number 2, because Kyler Murray, there's only a few teams in the NFL who can handle it. He's an air raid quarterback. There aren't that many quarterbacks in the NFL who are doing air raid, and especially quarterbacks who did air raid successfully. Let's put it this way. Up until this season in 2018, when Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes were both successful, and Baker Mayfield's success is a bit debatable. I mean, he had a tough time against the Broncos. You can't name one of the starting cornerbacks for the Broncos that game. So you had Baker Mayfield, the air raid quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, up against the worst defense that the Broncos have ever put together, or have put together in the last 10 years last season, and Baker Mayfield barely defeated them. Patrick Mahomes has thrown 1 touchdown against the Denver Broncos. Those are air raid defense. Those are air raid quarterbacks. I think Patrick Mahomes, up until his last game, had thrown 1 touchdown in 8 quarters on the Broncos. That's not to say he's only thrown 1 in his entire career. But Case Keenum was an air raid quarterback. So Kyler Murray's skill set, he's an air raid quarterback. There's only a couple teams probably willing to take a risk on an air raid quarterback. Arizona, Cliff Kingsbury at Texas Tech perfected the air raid offense. But that's not to say that Josh Rosen can't do it. Josh Rosen's a first round pick, so Josh Rosen should be able to run the air raid. It's not a dumb offense. I mean, it's a dumb offense. It's not difficult. Throw the ball as far as you can to the most open person. Hopefully they score. That's it. That's not the kind of quarterback Dwayne Haskins is. Dwayne Haskins comes from a pro-style offense. Ohio State plays a pro-style offense. You've seen it translate to the NFL. We've also seen Baker Mayfield contribute to the NFL. Prior to Baker Mayfield or Patrick Mahomes, I will say other air raid quarterbacks off the top of my head, Johnny Manziel was an air raid quarterback. Ryan Tannehill for Miami was an air raid quarterback. They just haven't had the success in the NFL that you want. So drafting Kyler Murray now, you're taking risk. You're hopefully running the air raid NFL offense, but you're keeping your fingers crossed that teams haven't figured it out yet, because once they do, Patrick Mahomes is screwed, Baker Mayfield is out of luck, and whoever drafted Kyler Murray is probably drafting another quarterback. So I would put Herbert ahead of everyone this season. I do want to put a caveat that I don't know how I would rank Dwayne Haskins or Kyler Murray. I would rank them differently depending on which team I was for. If I were the Broncos, I have zero ability for Kyler Murray to do anything other than be a kind of a trick quarterback at this point. I'm not set up to run an air raid offense. We don't have the alignment for it, and they haven't been drafting that way in the last few years. Case Keenum was an air raid quarterback in college, but Case Keenum graduated from college 7 years ago. So you could say, Case Keenum, Alex Smith, but they've also run NFL offenses competitively since then. Let's catch up on the questions. Prinke says, I already answered your question, sorry. Bronco Betty, so how much would the Broncos need to give up to get high enough in the draft to quality 2020 quarterback in 2020, say roughly where would they be if they have an 8-8 season. So this is where I am, Bronco Betty. There's 21 significant quarterbacks available. That includes 6 people from the NFL draft, but it also includes Dak Prescott and Brian Hoyer or Teddy Bridgewater, those type. Nate Sudfeld. Nate Sudfeld is the third string quarterback or second string quarterback now for the Philadelphia Eagles. Those are guys who are coming out who I think could start and should start for certain teams. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not just an NFL draft premium where there are quarterbacks available. The free agency is going to be a full supply of really good quarterbacks. There's a surplus of quarterbacks, and I think the NFL is going to use it to drive the price down of quarterbacks, which is only going to help the Broncos. So if you're wondering where you would need to draft a quarterback in 2020 to get a significant quarterback, you're looking in the top 20, top 25. You got 5-6 quarterbacks, in my opinion, who could be drafted in the first round. That's before the season. Like, that's expecting 0 people to move up or 0 people to get better and come from nowhere. I would draft the quarterback I would draft this season would be Tyree Jackson. See what he can do. Tyree Jackson can be your backup quarterback for the next 4 years if you love him. If you don't, you drafted a quarterback in the 4th round. It's not that big of a deal. It's similar at stake as like Kyle Lauletta or drafting a Russell Wilson or a Dak Prescott in years previous. There's a couple quarterbacks like that who are low risk, high reward quarterbacks in 2019 who I think you could draft. They're just not guys in the first round. John says, what are the chances White drops to 10? If not, Haskins is there. Do we draft Haskins? Devin White is meeting with the Oakland Raiders today. Oakland Raiders are the number 4 overall pick. It does not, based on friends I have in Tampa and I think I would say the scout interest on Devin White, I do not think, John, that Devin White is going to make it past number 5 I don't think he'll get drafted past Tampa Bay. Right now the Oakland Raiders are pushing at 4. They're even knocking on the door. Devin White is one of those once in a generation defensive players who probably won't last. The name that I want you guys to get excited about and probably start associating with the Broncos in that I'd hope that you can get excited about defensive tackle would be Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver, if he is to last to 10, I think that's the Broncos would be ecstatic and jump up for. If it's between, let's say, Ed Oliver, Devin White, and Dwayne Haskins, you're going to Devin White, obviously. But if it's between Ed Oliver and Dwayne Haskins or Ed Oliver and Drew Lock, I think you're going Ed Oliver. I think the Broncos, that's what they would do. They're going to get their other defensive tackle in there. The Broncos this season, and again, defensive tackle isn't a position of need. So it would be weird for them to go Ed Oliver. Inside linebacker is a position of need, but you don't need to draft an inside linebacker in the first round. You can get him in the 3rd round. You can get him in the 4th round. In the last inside linebacker to do significantly well for Vic Fangio was Danny Trevathan. Danny Trevathan was a 4th round, or no, he was even later than that, picked by the Denver Broncos. I don't think that there's a premium on inside linebackers this season. I don't think that there's any significant push to draft one early on. They still have Josie Jewell, still have Todd Davis. I'm all for Devin White. Devin White is in my opinion, the best defensive player in the NFL draft this season. I might even put him as a top player, but it's weird that the Broncos would like jump forward for this guy. He's good, but he's not a quarterback. He's not a game-changing safety or a cornerback or something. He's an inside linebacker. I think I can never find the quote. I think Wade Phillips had it scrubbed from the internet, but he used to have a quote on the internet which said, "You draft your starting inside linebacker in the 4th or the 5th round every season." Like, meaning anyone could play inside linebacker. The entire defense is funneled towards those inside linebackers. Elway's probably wanting a quarterback with a 5th-year rookie contract, not a free agent quarterback with a big contract, so he's going to be all in on the 2020 quarterback stakes. My opinion, yes, Bronco Bay, I completely agree. I think Justin Herbert or bust, but there's also Jake Fromm. There's Tua, who it seems like Miami Dolphins are doing all they can to right now get up to number one because they have made zero effort to secure a quarterback. Zappa says Vic Fangio got Danny Trevathan his first year in Chicago, then got his other inside linebacker in the draft 2018 year 4. He built defenses methodically, it would seem. Yeah. Let me go back to fourth question. So fourth question, we only have two more. Fourth question, I also ran a poll for: should the Broncos target a center, left tackle, or right guard with a day 2 pick? The question I think they were asking essentially is Connor McGovern going to play center or right guard, I guess, is the decision you would have to make. 48% of the respondents said center, 16% said left tackle, and 36% said guard. So Broncoverse would like to supply Mike Munchak with his center, the kind of captain of his offensive line, and they would like to do that in the draft. Dalton Reisner, Colorado boy, could be a second round or third round player at this point. That would put him on day 2. That seems like simpatico. Let's see what Mile High Report guy said. Hopefully it wasn't. Tim says yes. Ian St. Clair says only if it's Dalton Reisner. Scotty says Tim stole my answer. Go with best player available every round, Joe says. But Mile High Report again, offering a significant contribution to this live shoot. John says hearing Reisner and Bradbury don't make it beyond 25-29. What are you hearing? The Lindstrom. Chris Lindstrom is the one who I think would satiate the palates of most Broncos fans. If you haven't had time to look into the offensive lineman this season, Dalton Reisner from Colorado played college football elsewhere, but he's been in on a meeting, I think he's one of the visits for the Broncos. And you got Chris Lindstrom. There's I'd say 6 opportunities in the first 5 rounds to find a starter at center, at right guard, at tackles. It's a whole different sport because there's only a couple teams right now in the college football who are even doing 3-point stances. There's Stanford, there's Iowa, there's Wisconsin. There's only there's 5 or 6 schools where you have a 3-point, a tackle, a left tackle, or a right tackle starting in a 3-point stance. The rest of them need to be trained. And it takes up to 3 years because they're not able to hit in practice anymore. They're not doing as much practice as they used to do. I think those are all the excuses that you'd hear generically from NFL coaches on why they can't draft a left tackle, but most of them apply. Welcome Dylan. Bronco Betty says, I heard Raiders interested in Reisner late in the first round. Raiders, Mike Mayock did his press conference on Friday, and he's like, I would love to have 5 more picks between 20 and 60. That's where I think most of the value is, and I think most people would agree that's where most of the value is. The upper end of the draft is scary. Top 10 picks, there's 3 people in the top 10 picks who probably wouldn't have been top 10 picks anywhere outside of this draft. Kyler Murray is an interesting one. I don't know where he's actually going to get drafted. Let's assume he goes number 1. But would you draft Drew Lock in the first top 10 picks last season? If you had Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Sam Darnold available, do you draft Drew Lock at 4? No, you don't. Dwayne Haskins, you draft him over Josh Rosen maybe, but do you draft him over Sam Darnold? No, he's the same exact quarterback as Sam Darnold. Do you draft him over Baker Mayfield? Definitely not. Do you draft him over Josh Allen? Again, same offense. Josh Allen ran a pro-style offense at Wyoming. Dwayne Haskins runs a pro-style offense at Ohio State, but they're different quarterbacks. I think compare you're going to see my gardener pop up behind me, so if it gets too loud, let me know. John says, I hope we avoid Lock like the plague. I'm with you. Let's get to the 5th question. How long have I gone? I'm at 35 minutes. All right, guys. 5th question. if you were starting today as the Broncos, I want you guys to respond to this. So everybody in the chat room, respond. I want to interact with you about your response, but also please respond. Number 5, if you were starting today as the owner of the Broncos, what is the first 3 things that you would do? This got some actually interesting. Tim says meet with Joe Ellis, get an idea of what he has in the works, and put a plan in place to transition decision making to myself, with the idea of retaining him during the period of time the Brian Sanders treatment. Number 2, meet with LA, get an idea of how football operations work, and set up a plan to learn the process of running an NFL franchise. He would be retained regardless of at least several years. Number 3, immediately start planning for a new stadium that would maximize sound focus on the field, and also renaming stadium to Pat Bowlen Field at Mile High Stadium. Number 1 from Scotty Payne, make sure that I have the comfiest office chair. Number 2, make Taco Tuesday a thing in the delight of Lyman. Number 3, tell Jeff and Joe about the Broncos draft board. Okay, John says, why no interest in Rosen from Elway? John, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think that the Broncos have ever been significantly interested in Josh Rosen. He, one thing I specifically heard about from a we'll call him a scout connected, a connected scout, was he pointed out how every single coach Josh Rosen had ever worked with has been fired, and then at the end of the season, UCLA fired their head coach. So it was like he was pointing that out, and then Josh Rosen gets to the NFL, and again all of his coaches get fired. So it's like he didn't even make it through half of his season with a coach that we know is a decent coach. Like we saw Mike McCoy work with Tim Tebow, and Tim Tebow made playoffs and then won a playoff game. So Mike McCoy was able to do it with Tim Tebow, but not Josh Rosen. And then the other thing is, when Josh Rosen played the Broncos, John, it didn't go well. Remember, he had 3 fumbles, he had 3 interceptions, and he was sacked 6 times. Like and that was against the Broncos, the 2018 Broncos. That wasn't even a good Broncos team. That was a bad Broncos defense. Like the cornerbacks weren't good, the safeties weren't good, the defensive line was okay, the middle linebackers were a mess. Yeah. So I think all those things maybe combined probably point to, and like, what has Josh Rosen done? Like Josh Rosen, I bring it up a lot that Caleb Wilson is owed the credit for Josh Rosen's 2018. Really what happened with Josh Rosen, everyone turned to the Texas A&M UCLA game right as Josh Rosen started doing well, but he didn't do well without Caleb Wilson. So once he started throwing it to Caleb Wilson, who ended up with 200 yards that game, it's like everyone turned in and they were like, Josh Rosen's amazing. But prior to that, I think he put up like six turnovers, and then everyone turns to the game and watches him take over and has like this one significant win. He's only had like 3 significant wins in his entire career. I don't mean to like bash Josh Rosen. Do you think the Raiders make a surprise move and trade Carr during the draft? Yeah, I think that they would. I think that the Raiders move, it has to be for Kyler Murray, right? You're moving to Las Vegas. You have to get a splash quarterback. You keep Derek Carr and Kyler Murray. You can just do the Joe Flacco, and also Derek Carr wasn't included in my original. If you guys have been watching since the beginning, Derek Carr wasn't included in those 22 quarterbacks. He's another one who I expect to be a free agent next year, or not signed in a significant way to any team, most likely a backup. The Raiders have space for both Kyler Murray and Derek Carr. Yeah. All right. So number 5, back to the question: if you were starting today as the owner of the Broncos, what are the first three things you would do? Joe Rowe says eat tacos, hire best scouting department in the league, and number 3 would be offer them taco. Just says lower beer prices. Nothing would make Ellis look worse than giving a break to the fans. You're gonna see Gardner right now. Just like directing at home. This is what I would be like if I were producing. All right, guys. You're gonna see him again in a second because I'm gonna come back by this way. Yeah. If you let me get to Twitter real quick and see if Twitter had any funny responses to what you would do. There were 15 responses on Twitter. Ooh. Guy crashed into my house. Stacy. Bronco Johnson. At Bronco Johnson says, number 1, executive decision to trade 2 firsts and Flacco for Wilson, telling Elway that this is the one shortcoming that I'll take hand in fixing. Number 2, try to lock up Chris Harris Jr. It is feasible after acquiring Russell Wilson. Number 3, name the field after Pat Bowlen. Stadium. Is this too loud? It's so loud. Alright guys, let me wrap it up. I don't know what could possibly be needing to be blown by a... wait, here it is. He doesn't even look. Do you think he'll look? He won't even look. He just wants to be on TV. Alright guys, I'll wrap it up on that. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be back on Wednesday. We're going to have more draft stuff. We're more questions too, and much more people tuning in. But we're gonna up the video content on Mile High Report. We're going to not have gardeners here on Wednesday and Thursday, so that's a plus. And then we'll probably know more about Russell Wilson then too. All right, guys, have a good night. Say hi to your mom for me, and send your dad a little text message telling him you're glad that he's around. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.